Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore the fascinating rise, the hidden psychology, and the ultimate dramatic collapse of the modern shopping mall. Take a second and just think back to the last time you walked through a set of those heavy, double-glass doors into a mall. Remember that overwhelming rush of air conditioning, the distinct smell of warm pretzels or cinnamon rolls wafting through the concourse, and of course, that echoing hum of hundreds of conversations. We're going to unpack exactly how these massive sensory-loaded structures fundamentally shaped our society and what actually happens when they inevitably fall. All right, let's dive right into this core mystery first. Have you ever wondered why a quick, simple trip to the mall suddenly turns into a multi-hour blur? You walk in on a very specific mission, right? You just need a plain pair of white socks. And somehow, against all logic and reason, you leave 3 hours later carrying shopping bags filled with a new jacket, a fresh pretzel, and you have absolutely zero sense of what time of day it is or even where you parked your car. Well, it turns out it's actually a heavily documented psychological phenomenon. It's called the Gruen Transfer. The second you step inside, you're walking into a deliberate design trap. It literally overwhelms your senses with clutter, sheer size, and visual glitz to turn you into a highly suggestible impulse buyer. Think about how a mall actually operates on a sensory level for a minute. There are almost never any visible clocks. Natural light from the outside world, stripped away and replaced by an idealized, hyperreal artificial glow. Ambient music hums in the background to set a very specific pacing, and the layout itself is intentionally confusing. Escalators were purposefully shoved at opposite ends of the concourse, forcing you to walk past dozens of storefronts you never intended to visit just to get to the second floor. It disorients you just enough so that you lose your original intentions entirely. So, in today's explainer, we're going to cover 1. The mall's utopian origins, 2. The Gruen Transfer, 3. The privatized third place, 4. The death of the mall, and finally, 5. Reimagining abandoned spaces.
Section 1. The mall's utopian origins.
Let's step back in time to see how the mall was originally born. And believe it or not, it started out of a genuine desire for community connection, not just retail dominance. So the 1950s brought this massive post-war economic boom. Aided by the GI Bill, American suburbs were rapidly expanding. By 1950, a staggering 90% of U.S. households owned a car. That allowed families to live further and further away from urban centers. But this massive suburban sprawl had a really glaring problem. It completely lacked a central gathering place. Families were just isolated in their cul-de-sacs. So in 1952, the Dayton Company commissioned a visionary architect named Victor Gruen to solve this exact issue. In 1956, his solution became a reality when the very first indoor climate-controlled mall, the Southdale Center, opened its doors in Minnesota. The explicit goal was to give isolated suburbanites a perfect, weatherproof day of leisure away from the harsh, freezing Minnesota winter. It was such a revolutionary success that by the 1960s, this architectural model just exploded in popularity around the globe.
Section 2. The Gruen Transfer. But the utopian visionary behind this building quickly realized his creation had morphed into something entirely different. The dream was completely hijacked. You see, Gruen was originally from Vienna, and his actual goal was to create a vibrant, communal public square. He wanted to bring a traditional European sensibility to those sprawling, car-dependent suburbs. In Vienna, you have bustling town squares where the lines between shopping, socialization, leisure, and play are just naturally blurred. You can sit on a public bench, feed the pigeons, chat with a neighbor, and drink a coffee without feeling immense pressure to constantly be spending money. But retail developers looked at his model and realized, hey, stripping away the civic amenities and creating a confusing windowless layout actually maximizes our profits. They didn't want a town square filled with idle socialization. They wanted a highly optimized consumption machine. Fast forward to 1978, during a speech in London, Gruen had become so disgusted by the hyper-commercialization of his own idea that he completely disavowed it. He literally stated, "I refuse to pay alimony for those bastard developments." I mean, think about that next time you get completely lost looking for the food court. The very psychological trap used to manipulate shoppers, the Gruen Transfer, was permanently named after a man who absolutely hated what it became.
Section 3. The privatized third place.
Despite his horror, the mall successfully became what sociologists call our third place. This is a term coined by sociologist Ray Oldenburg. Basically, the first place is your home, the second place is your work or school, and the third place is an anchor of community life. It's a public space to gather, like a local pub, a free public library, or a city park. But the mall as a third place came with some serious hidden strings attached. To understand those strings, we kind of have to look at what makes a public space work in the first place. Urban research out of Pretoria analyzing quasi-public spaces tells us that successful traditional public spaces require three core elements: function, form, and meaning. Function means the space is accessible and diverse. Form means it has good connectivity and pleasing aesthetics. And meaning provides local identity and a sense of safety. These are absolutely critical for a healthy, functioning society to interact and bond. Now, when these three elements perfectly overlap, developers are able to replicate this exact civic model to create what researchers call a quasi-public club good. By successfully mimicking function, form, and meaning, malls create spaces that feel completely public to the average person. But in reality, they are highly excludable, privately owned, and fiercely geared towards profit. They offer the comforting aesthetic of a lively town square for sure, but management tightly controls the environment to protect paying consumers and ruthlessly filter out any elements that don't serve profit maximization. We can actually see this exact dynamic in action at the Pretoria malls from the research. Take a place like the Woodlands Mall with its vibrant playground, or the Irene Village Mall with its beautiful, relaxing water fountain. These spaces mimic real village squares perfectly, complete with tree-lined walkways and open-air seating that invite you to just linger. But make no mistake, they remain fenced in, heavily surveilled with CCTV and private guards, and controlled by a very strict code of conduct. These spaces operate as consumer citizenships. Your right to exist in this public space is dictated entirely by your ability to buy into it. If you're loitering without purchasing, or if you're unhoused, private security will simply remove you. The hidden strings of private security dictate exactly who gets to be part of the community.
But even within this intensely securitized, profit-driven corporate setting, we honestly cannot deny the cultural impact it had. The mall was undeniably the ultimate teenage backdrop. If you grew up in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, you definitely remember this exact feeling. As essayist Rax King beautifully put it regarding the mall generation, we played out the great love stories of the world in cruel, petty simulacra. It was a highly managed stage where teenagers rehearsed for adult social life. It was a place to just hang out, find a sense of community away from your parents, experience first dates, and buy countercultural fashion right off a corporate rack.
Section 4. The death of the mall. However, this era of peak consumer identity couldn't last forever, and the structural cracks have rapidly started to show. The decline has been incredibly steep. By early 2021, regional malls faced a devastating 11.4% vacancy rate, a brutal combination of the rise of online dropshipping, the incredible convenience of one-click e-commerce, shifting consumer habits, and a global pandemic shattered the foundational premise of in-person retail. And here's the thing. The mall relies on a very fragile ecosystem centered around anchor stores. You know the ones. These are the massive multi-level department stores like Macy's or Sears at the far ends of the mall. They pay very cheap rent because their brand name draws in massive crowds. The smaller stores in the middle, the pretzel stands, the boutique clothing shops, they pay sky-high rent and survive entirely on the foot traffic generated by those anchors. So, when those massive anchor stores go bankrupt and close, the foot traffic vanishes, and the entire ecosystem of the smaller stores collapses right alongside them. Even more shocking is the research projection that 50%, half of America's 116,000 shopping malls, could become entirely obsolete. Just picture the sheer scale of that abandonment for a second. That is thousands of acres of concrete, millions of square feet of climate-controlled structures, silent escalators, drained fountains, and vast, empty parking lots left completely abandoned to decay right in the middle of our sprawling suburbs. And society is processing this profound loss in a very unique way. This structural collapse has birthed a massive internet phenomenon called mall Gothic. We fixate on these giant abandoned spaces through viral liminal space videos and haunting photography. We look at these empty, echoing halls almost like modern ruins of a lost civilization. We are grieving a flawed, sure, but deeply shared public life. It's this profound nostalgia for a time when we genuinely believed in the simple prospect of the good life, powered by endless consumer abundance, even if it was just an illusion. Section 5. Reimagining abandoned spaces. But this architectural corpse doesn't have to stay a ruin. It is actually a massive canvas for community rebirth. Design research out of Claremont shows exactly how this can be done, using Maryland's demolished Landover Mall as a prime case study. Instead of just letting the concrete rot, the concept radically transforms the dead, enclosed space into a highly eco-friendly, wellness-focused landscape. Instead of windowless consumer traps designed to disorient you, the new design utilizes massive geodesic domes, incorporates locally sourced building materials, and intentionally floods the interior with natural light and foliage to support both the physical and mental health of the surrounding community. And this isn't just about making an abandoned plot of land look pretty. It's about fundamentally evolving for the future. The pandemic permanently changed our psychological tolerance for crowded, windowless, enclosed spaces with recirculated air, right? By adopting post-pandemic architecture guidelines, these dead spaces can be functionally reborn. This means integrating wide open-air green spaces, incorporating dynamic 6-foot spatial flows to organically prevent pedestrian congestion, and adapting outdoor dining with flexible protective seating. We can literally recycle the massive ghost towns of 20th century consumerism into breathing 21st century wellness hubs that actually serve the public good.
So, as the tragic hero of the retail empire falls, and the disorienting echo of the Gruen Transfer slowly fades away, I want to leave you with this final thought. The forces of private profit planned our public spaces and managed our social connections for over half a century. In the face of their absolute abandonment, how will you step up to reclaim and shape the future of your community spaces? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.